And welcome to Date Night. So tonight we are talking about communication. Now I've got some notes on the whiteboard here for us tonight. And I have actually taken some notes tonight because I will be very, very honest in that communication is not my strong suit. I do find it very hard sometimes to communicate my ideas and my thoughts in a way that doesn't confuse people. So when I'm teaching, I do sometimes find things quite difficult to explain when I'm trying to explain a process or when I'm trying to explain a concept. And my sister would be able to absolutely give testimony to this. I can get quite lost in my own thoughts and not be very clear about what I'm saying. I get quite jumbled in my thoughts sometimes. And I've also found in my business that I haven't been an effective communicator with contractors who have worked for me, employees, I guess, who've worked for me when I've been working with other businesses who are doing services for me. I haven't always communicated very well with them. And unfortunately in that case, I wouldn't say necessarily that I was a bad communicator, but more so that you just don't know what you don't know. And it wasn't until after, or as we got through the project, that I realized I needed to be more clear in certain areas. And I certainly have decided since doing the Eat Fat Get Fit program and our nutrition boot camp that I need to be more prescriptive in what I'm doing. And my sister very much has said to me that I often give people too many choices because I recognize that there's many ways in which things can be done. And I don't want to box people in, whereas my sister has sort of said to me, you know, you've got to be prescriptive. People just need to be told what to do. They will then go and do it. They don't want to be given a million options. They just want to know that what they're going to do is going to work. So for me, communication is something that I absolutely need to work on. In fact, I actually enrolled myself into a communication course a couple of months ago, and it was just before I started working with my business coach. So completing the communication course is actually on my to-do list for 2019. I just needed to get all of this done first, and then I will definitely undertake that course. So in terms of communication and what it is, it's obviously the way in which we express ideas, thoughts, our dialogue between us and other people. In terms of the way in which we communicate, we have our verbal communication, such as what I'm doing now. We have non-verbal. Sorry, that was a bit rude. We have, and then the written. So we obviously write as a form of communicating. So there's quite a few ways in which we communicate. And interestingly enough, it can be the non-verbal communication that can actually be the most powerful. You know, you can say, I'm sorry to someone, and the look on your face says exactly the opposite. My daughter, Sarai, has found a very full-on personality this year. She's a lot like me. This is who I used to be as a child. And she can give a look and an eye roll that drives me wild. And she doesn't have to say a word, just the look on her face and the huff. So sometimes it is the non-verbal stuff that is really, really quite powerful. So in terms of improving communication in our families, number one, the first thing we need to do is create the opportunity for communication. So at the moment, and this is why we are trying to prioritize family time, why I'm trying to get you to unburden yourself and uncommit from things that you shouldn't be. We are, you know, we're overworked, we're overcommitted, we're overscheduled. We're trying to clear your schedule. We're trying to bring down your workload, bring down your commitments, because the number one thing, the most important thing in your life is your family. And that's what we want you to focus on. And one of the major reasons why we want you to do this is so that you are present in your home, which creates the opportunity for your children to talk to you, and if you have a partner, for your partner to also talk to you. So it is really important to create those opportunities. So as an example, some of the things you can do is you can say, right, between the hours of 5 p.m. and 7 p.m, there is no technology. There's no phones, iPads, laptops, TV, computers, no nothing. And that means then that you pretty much are forced to actually talk to the people you live with. What a shocker. You could also make a decision that as you're, ferrying your children around, to turn the radio off and just say, look, if I'm taking kids to different events, the radio is off in the car. So there's a number of little tips and tricks that you can implement that, are not a burden to you and your family, but just to create that opportunity for you to have communication with your family. This is a big one, just having a family meal. In my house, we never watched TV in the mornings. We were not allowed. We ate all of our meals up at the table, and especially dinner time was up at the dinner table. We very, very, very rarely were able to eat in front of the TV. Like that was once in a blue moon. And unfortunately, in our house at the moment, we have got into a terrible habit of eating in the lounge room in front of the TV, and I loathe it. I hate it. It is not something that I want for me and for my children, and it is something that in 2019 I am going to be all over this. No more meals in the lounge room. Every meal occurs at the table. And by doing that, just by having the meals at the table, I mean, immediately you're looking at everyone. This creates a perfect opportunity to talk. And what you can do as well is that you can have dessert, which encourages people to stay at the table. If the kids know, particularly the older kids, the little kids, you can keep at the table for as long as you like, really. But the older kids, to try and keep them to stay at the table and to talk to you, you can lure them in with, with a dessert, and they have to stay there and continue to talk to you. So sometimes, dessert is the healthy option. When you're trying to create a healthy family with lots of communication and love, sometimes we need to do these things. Something else you can do is the highs and lows. So have a chat to your family about good things that happen during the day and not so good things that happen during the day. And then encourage your kids to be involved in your gratitude practice. So if you in the morning want to do that gratitude practice by yourself, which is really something I like to do by myself, I don't like to have anyone around me during that time, because that is really my special time. Then what you can do at night time when you're at the dinner table is you can actually do the gratitude practice then, and then that way the kids get the benefit of it and it's not interfering in your morning ritual. By the way, if anyone likes tea, this is the peach and pineapple tea by Red Seal. Oh, it is delicious. You can have it hot or cold and it is scrumptious. All right, something else that we should all be looking at doing is implementing date night. Now, it is so important to have date night. Tony and I try and have date night each week now, because if you listened in last date night, I talked about how my love language is quality time, and Tony and I were butting heads because I really wanted to spend time with him and he couldn't understand why I needed this specific time with him when we lived with each other and spent every minute of every day with each other. So date night is all about going somewhere, whether it be out for a meal, whether it be out for dessert or a coffee or whatever it is, and spending time one-on-one with your loved ones. Now, it is not just important to do it with your partner. It is important to take your children out one by one and to have that time with each of your children in a one-on-one setting. So you should be scheduling date night for each of your children as well. Okay, the next one is using technology to your advantage. We live in a crazy technologically advanced world. It's far more technologically advanced than I am. But we can actually use this to our advantage. What you could create, and this is just a suggestion, is you could create like a family newsletter, and the kids can all contribute some photos or a video, or they can talk about, some of the good things that happened during the month, some of the important things. And it's not for anybody else other than yourselves, but you just create this family newsletter, and you could do it, once a month. You could do it once every few months, and just excuse me, have that opportunity to share important moments in your life, and then create something that you can then keep. So you actually get something good from it as well. Something else that you can do is creating your own family traditions. How good is this? How often do we just do things because it's a family tradition, but it's not your family tradition? I get very frustrated sometimes because I feel like my family is Tony and my children. My extended family are my parents, my sister, my brothers, Tony's family. And I sometimes feel like all of their family traditions are more important than Tony and I creating our own family traditions. And it's something that, you know, I have to try and resolve, whether I get over it or whether we do try and create our own family traditions. But I really believe strongly in doing some stuff for just you and your family that you do, that you create, that is just for you and your children and your partner if you have one. And it can be anything from an annual road trip. It could be camping out in the backyard at Easter. It could be, you know, Tony shared in the group during the week that her and her sons make rum balls every Christmas. You know, having those things that is just really special for you guys, and that's something that you do every year, is really beautiful, and it's something that the kids will look forward to. Another way to improve your communication is by reading. We do not value books as anywhere near as much as we should. Just by reading is going to improve your vocabulary. It's going to improve your ability to express yourself. And half of the problem that we're having when we are communicating with our loved ones is we are not expressing ourselves clearly. So we are saying something and it's not being communicated in a way that is then being understood by the other person. And the more you read, the greater your vocabulary, the greater your ability to express, the greater your ability to understand language. So it's a very simple thing to do, and again for your children, so not just for you. So getting our kids to read is really, really important in making them able to also effectively communicate. Now, when you are in a situation of communicating, just make sure I haven't got any more notes there. When you are actually when you are talking with someone, here are some little tips for you as well. Excuse me. So the first one is the 80-20 rule. You should listen 80% of the time and talk 20% of the time. So the problem is that these days we tend to listen with the intent of replying instead of listening with the intent of understanding. So when someone's talking to us, we're already thinking about what it is we're going to say back. We're thinking about what our reply is, rather than thinking about what it is they're saying and trying to understand what it is they're saying. So talk less, listen more. Listen with the intent of understanding. Don't listen with the intent of just replying. To make sure you understand someone's position, ask questions about what they're saying, and ask a number of questions if you're not 100% certain. So keep clarifying until you're really sure what it is the person is trying to tell you. Another thing to consider is to put yourself in that person's shoes. Try and empathize with where they're coming from. This is probably one of the ones that I find the absolute hardest. I have struggled very, very much to understand Tony's position. I get very frustrated that he can't see where I'm coming from. And I sometimes just think I cannot understand how you are perceiving it in this way. So Tony and I very, very much will see the same situation out of from two completely different points of view, and it does create friction. In fact, Tony is very much a product of his family. And I've actually had friction with his family over the years, and it's the same issue. He and his family see things just from a very different perspective to me, and it creates friction, it creates tension, and it actually has over the years created a lot of stress and anxiety and problems that thankfully we seem to have resolved. in the last year or so. But trying to understand someone's position and trying to understand where someone is coming from improves communication a gazillion times. Like, that's not even a number, and I'm sorry. But, you know, if you can just try and understand where someone is coming from and try and put yourself in their shoes, you are going to have so much more effective communication with that person. And hopefully avoid conflict along the way as well. When someone is talking to you, be enthusiastic about the fact they're talking to you. And I find this difficult. So Andrew, my eldest, my 15-year-old, would talk to me about video games, and I'm just like, and he'll say to me, "You don't care, do you, Mum?" And I'm like, no, not really. I will listen with enthusiasm about just about anything he has to tell me. But when he wants to talk to me about video games, definitely struggle with that one. But as much as you can, have enthusiasm. Avoid distractions. If your child or your partner's talking to you, put your phone away, turn the TV off, you know, create some space, send the kids away, shut the door, you know, give them your full attention. Make sure you're looking at them and you're really listening to what it is that they're telling you. Smile. When someone's telling you something, so long as it's appropriate, but, you know, if someone's talking to you and communicating with you, nothing stops a conversation dead in its track quite like a scowl. I'll be talking to Tony about something and he'll get this look on his face, and it just stops me. I'm like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And off I go, because he just gets that look on his face. So you may not need to smile, but at least have a neutral expression. And, you know, be honest. Be honest about what you're thinking, because if you hold back and you don't say what it is you're actually thinking, it's just going to create problems later down the track. And it will create tension, it will create friction, and you'll end up in a fight, which is probably where I go wrong as well, in that I don't want to be honest because I don't want there to be a problem. And I feel like in certain situations when Tony wants to do something, I feel like sometimes he shouldn't be coming to me saying he wants to do whatever it is, because I feel like, you know, from a family's perspective, it's not fair. It puts an unnecessary burden on me, and I feel like he should make the right decision himself and not need to bring it to me. And I don't feel like I should be the one that says no. I think he should be the one that says no, and then, you know, leave it at that. Instead, he'll come to me with something, and I don't want to say, you know, I don't want you to do that. I feel like as a grown man, that is something that he should do himself, but I don't want to be honest about that and feel like I'm that wife that says you can't do this and you can't do that. So I hope that made sense. But where you can, be really, really honest when you're communicating with people. Think about your body language. Our body language says so much. If you're standing there with your arms crossed across your chest, slouching, scowl on your face, you know, that speaks volumes. So we want to have, you know, a very neutral, open posture, so that when someone's talking to us, they feel like you are receptive, or you're being receptive of what it is that they're saying to you. And really importantly, you know, think about what it is you're saying, or think about the way you're saying something and not just what you're saying. You know, you can say, "I'm sorry," or "I'm sorry," you know, you're saying the same words, but in a completely different way. So it is really important that we think about how we're talking to people, the way in which we're talking to people, and not just the words, because the words are often not the biggest problem. It is often the way in which we deliver it. It is often the context of which it's done. And when we're going to communicate effectively with one another, we have to think about not just the words that we're saying, but how we're actually saying it to them, and in what way it's being delivered. You know, are we delivering it in love? Are we delivering it are we being mean? Are we being spiteful? So they are some tips on improving a communication within our families and with our loved ones. So I'm actually going to go away and practice some of these things, because this is something that I'm not good at. Tony and I do not communicate well with each other. We have two completely different languages, two completely different operating systems, two completely different perspectives, two completely different love languages. So for me, for 2019, number one, I've already cleared my schedule for 2019 so that I'll be home more with the kids in the afternoon. So I've prioritized the family already, but next I want to implement family meals, and I also want to implement date night with my children. So I want to make sure that, because Tony and I have started doing that now, but now I want to include the kids and regularly be taking the kids for one-on-one dates with both myself, and then also giving Tony the opportunity to do that too. All right, guys, I hope that has been helpful for you. I will pop this into the Facebook group and you can watch this at your leisure. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, and I'd love to hear if anybody else is also not a great communicator, or if you're an excellent communicator, because maybe you could teach us. All right, have a lovely evening, everybody, and I will see you all very shortly. All right, bye.